Shall we burn some
Hey,
rubber?
what is going on, everybody,
Don't blame
and
me if you get
welcome
hurt.
to Fantasia. For
everyone.
today,
We're
we're gonna be
the
jumping into
better
another
leave
session
you
of
follow.
Epic 7
Careful
out
on the road out there.
today. Got some more first
I'm not the
impressions
best
for you
person to be
guys.
saying that.
That's right, this time around we have Swift Flagbearer Sigret, and boy oh boy is her design pretty good. I do like the fact that her flag resembles a scythe, especially in her walking animations. But yeah, this is the one of the fan art winners of the contest that Smallgate had held earlier in the year, and although in my opinion this doesn't look like Sigret at all, I do respect the fact that they tried to see, look at that, look at the flag, she's holding it kind of like a scythe. I do appreciate the small attention to detail there, right? Anyway, moving on here, we have Swift Flagbearer Sigret's stat line, and she is going to be a fire thief of the Capricorn star sign. That is actually a it's not the best star sign ever. We'll talk about some units that have it. It's a really awkward stat spread. But she does have 118 base speed here, as you can see, and she does imprint, sorry, not imprint, she does also imprint to effectiveness, but she awakens into some effectiveness here, 30%. Her self-imprint is for effectiveness up to 27%, and her team imprint is for attack. Now, this is going to be a very debuffy type of unit, which kind of makes sense for the Thief class here, and she definitely is going to rely on effectiveness for a lot of her skills, right? But 118 base speed is not really impressive. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple other units that are comparable in terms of speed, or in terms of stats in general. Here's my Blooming Litica. She is actually fully built and PvP ready. Blooming Litica is also a Capricorn Thief, right? So you can see that most Blooming Liticas are not really that fast, and for good reason. The base speed matters a lot when you're trying to build a unit for that role. Now, aside from Blooming Litica, another unit that uses this star sign is I Winter. She was a collaboration unit with the Aspa collab, right, that we had a couple years ago. So this is also, you know, you can see the same stat line, 30% effectiveness here, 118 base speed, and the last unit is going to be Elvira. So Elvira also has the effectiveness and, you know, relatively mid base speed here. These units are not really tanky, besides Blooming Litica, who needs like a ton of bulk actually to try to get this tanky. I'm sacrificing a lot of speed and effectiveness for this. They're actually quite hard to build bulk on. If you've ever tried to build Elvira and trying to make her tanky, it's kind of difficult, right? Especially with people now trying to build Elviras to counter Setsukas, yeah, so they can't get stripped or anything. It is tricky, so do keep that in mind. Now, Sigret, does she need a lot of HP? Not really, not necessarily, but it is good to keep in mind that she is a support unit, a debuffer of sorts, and we'll get into her kit very shortly here. So when it comes to her skills, we have her skill 2, Target Lock, and boy oh boy does this live up to its name. After dispelling all buffs from the enemy, has a 75% chance to inflict target for 2 turns, up to a 100% chance with skill enhancements, and makes all allies except for the caster attack with a basic skill. Increases combat readiness of the caster by 30%. Using 10 souls for soul burn ignores effect resistance. Now this is pretty huge, and this is honestly probably the reason why Target Debuff even got a buff, right? It used to only have a 15% chance to, you know, decrease evasion, right, by only 15%, and increases damage dealt by 15%. But now it's going to decrease evasion by 50%, which is kind of massive. Now it's a 100% chance if you skill enhance this, and you can soul burn it for only a measly 10 souls to ignore resistance. That's huge, especially because the unit that you're targeting is going to take additional damage. But guys, let's ignore all of that and focus on this skill here, where it makes all allies except for the caster attack with a basic skill. This is Cringe Lua. This is Hellion Lua's skill 3, where you have the counter buffs on everybody, right, essentially. And if Hellion Lua gets attacked, she will allow all of her allies to attack with a basic skill to counter into the opponent. this is wild because Hellion Lua's skill is very reactionary. It is very, hey, if I get hit under these specific conditions, everyone will counter an attack into you. But in this case, well, it's proactive. You get to control when you want to use this skill, and it is a really good one, allowing all 3 of your DPS units, potentially, you're probably playing an aggro team here, to attack into your opponent is pretty disgusting, right? It's not even a dual attack with the highest attack ally, it's everybody's going to be attacking. I think this is honestly kind of crazy, but keep in fact, she is only 118 base speed, and that is going to help balance her quite a bit. We have a lot of units that can easily outspeed her, right? But you can see in this example here, she is going to cause this MLTU to dual attack. Now, usually when you finish off opponent, none of your other units can attack. Saria does attack here. It's a little peculiar, but I'll go back so you can see. Once this MLTU attacks, Saria is still targeting the Setsuka here, but because Saria is unique and that she attacks 2 units, she actually does only attack the Ruel. See, even though there's 2 units left here, she doesn't attack Lady of the Scales, she only attacks Ruel, right? So that's important to know. If you defeat somebody with all these like single target attacks, you can't just keep attacking. It's only on that one particular unit, unless you're a special case like Saria and maybe like Spectre Tenebria, for example, right? Bomb Model Kana might be one of the few other units that can do that. But yeah, you'll see that Requiem Rowana does not dual attack there, does not do that extra attack, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Okay, moving on, we have skill 3, Flag of Victory. Dispels 2 buffs from all enemies before up to a, this is a, what is that? Oh, 100% chance, yeah, to inflict fear for 2 turns, and decrease combat readiness by 20%. Wow, okay, this is basically Mort's S3. Except you get to actually dispel immunity and stuff here, right? Mort is weak to immunity because he can't dispel anything. This is dispelling buffs. Then you inflict fear for 2 turns, 100% chance. Knowing how fear works, if this is ever used on me, I lose 2 turns on every unit, and if I use this on my opponent, they're waking up first turn, right? It's a very unreliable debuff, but I guess that's why they're giving it to her here, because the S2 is relatively strong for burst damage. She also decreases combat readiness by 20%. That will synergize with certain units, or hey, perhaps just be decent to use overall if you're facing against things like Abyssal Euphines or Fire Politis, right, where they have your combat readiness gains. You can still push back your opponent's combat readiness here, which is pretty cool. But she will then grant increased speed to all allies for 2 turns, and at the start of the first battle, she grants increased evasion to the caster for 2 turns. So she is now joining the problem. They showed her fighting against Setsuka, you know, destroying this evasion unit, and then she herself is also an evasion unit. Now, granted, yeah, she can't replenish this increased evasion right here, right? It's just 2 turns of increased evasion at the start. It just kind of makes her tough to get rid of immediately. It's a little built-in protection. It's kind of nice. Do keep in mind that this is dispellable. It should just be a buff on her. So yeah, it's only for 2 turns as well. So yeah, if you get outsped by like New Luna and stuff, you get sealed or whatever, you might be in a little bit of a pickle. This is unique though. Sigret is one of the few recent units, I'd say, to come out with an actual skill too, right? It's not just a passive ability. So that's nice to see. But yeah, the increased speed is kind of nice, kind of reminds me of ML Politis. You're pushing back your opponent's combat readiness and you're giving your team some speed. ML Politis gives your team the rage buff, which increases speed to a lesser degree than the increased speed buff. So she's going to be very similar in that you think you might be able to cut after the pushback, but because the speed difference with this buff, you're probably going to get cut by your opponent, right? It's a little rough out there, but the increased speed is really good for pairing with units that scale with speed. And we'll talk about units that pair well with Sigret later on in the video, along with other things like discussing optimal artifacts and all that good stuff. But Flag of Victory, looking like it's pretty decent as a standalone skill. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of synergy with the skill 2, although having 2 skills that dispel buffs is always pretty good, right? So there you go. Sick animations here. Don't know why it instills fear in the opponent, but so be it. Skill 1 is Strike of the Flagbearer. I think they're missing the in there. And you attack the enemy with a flag with up to a 75% chance to inflict silence for 1 turn. After attacking, if the target is inflicted with silence, decreases combat readiness of the target by 25%. Alright, so this is honestly kind of like, what's her name? Angel of Light Angelica, where she could S1 and kind of silence you, right? And she can also push back your combat readiness. I feel like they just kind of took the skills off of several units. Hellion Lua, the Great Mortelix, and Angel of Light Angelica, and just slapped it onto Sigret here. But this is a relatively good standalone skill for a skill 1. Silence is huge, stops the opponents from doing stuff. If she's able to lap your opponent somehow with 118 base speed, then yeah, it could be decent, right? But in the end, this is mostly going to be something where you're controlling the last couple of units that your opponent has, because you're playing really aggressively into your opponent, I'm assuming, and this just allows you to stop them from this, like reviving, let's say, with like a Ruel or doing shenanigans like that, right? Decreasing combat readiness of the target's also huge, just pushing them back. She seems to have this trend where all 3 of her skills just push back your opponents. She does push herself up with her skill 2, though. I think 30% combat readiness. So there is a little bit of manipulation there, which is not bad. As you can see, she silences the Ruel. Even if she takes a turn, you can't revive, yeah? Okay, so moving on here, let's go ahead and take a look at the artifact that she has. Her artifact is the Glorious Flag, and it increases evasion by 20%, and after an ally uses a basic skill, has between a 50 and 100% chance to increase combat readiness of the caster by 10%. This artifact skill effect can only be applied to 1 hero within a team. So if you have a plus 15 copy of this artifact, it's going to give you a 75% chance to increase combat readiness by 10%. It seems like it's a pretty decent one on paper, because if you skill 2 with Sigret, it will give her 30% combat readiness, I believe, and if you max this out and let's say all 3 of your allies attack here, into your opponent with a basic skill, then you're increasing your combat readiness by 30% more, which is pretty nice. That 60% combat readiness increase, that's pretty solid. Keep in mind, your units afterwards are probably going to be taking a turn as well. So Sigret just pushed everybody back, or sorry, attacked, right? With everybody. Skill 1, everyone's you're probably gonna have some unit with a skill 1 that pushes up your units as well, so something like that's gonna happen. Your units are gonna come in, do their skills. Sigret has a good chance of lapping, is what I'm trying to say here, from her skill 2 into like maybe a skill 3. I don't know necessarily what you'd try to go for first. I would assume you'd go for the skill 3 first to fear everybody, and then later come in with a skill 2. That seems like it makes the most sense. In that case, lapping with this combat readiness here isn't necessarily like the best thing. It's not required, right? It seems like an interesting artifact. They actually made it so you can't just loop a bunch of thieves as well. If you got a bunch of these and you had 4 thieves all using skill 1, just increasing everyone's combat readiness over and over and over, that would have been hilarious to see abused, but they definitely stopped that with this this last line of text, right? Preventing this little loop from going on. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting unit because her kit would be super oppressive if she was a higher base speed, but 118, not going to be as threatening. She will be available, she's a limited unit by the way, starting on November 27th, so in about 2 weeks. It's going to be Thanksgiving weekend right there, right, that she'll be out. So if you celebrate Thanksgiving, it's a nice little bonus to add to your little holiday, little break there. But yeah, this is going to be kind of cool. So let's go ahead and just, since we talked about the artifact last, let's go ahead and continue talking about artifact alternatives that you can run. So the first artifact that comes to everyone's mind, I assume, is going to be RNL, right? RNL's attack increase is not really going to help her all that much. It might help with some chip damage here and there, but the up to 20% chance to just grant an extra turn at the end of your turn is kind of huge, especially if you open with a skill 3 and then follow up, you take an extra turn and you follow up with a skill 2. That is going to be immense pressure on your opponent. They're probably losing one of their units straight away with the S2, all the units going for their S1s right into them. But the second part is the the ability to just turn cycle your skills over and over and over again, right? That's also incredible. So your opponents are going to be feared. They're going to lose 1 unit. It's a 4v3. It's really strong at giving you a good opening advantage. Now, it is kind of RNG though, so there are other options that you can use to allow her to be more consistent in what she does in terms of debuffing your opponents or buffing your own team. When it comes to buffing your own team, there's actually a 4-star artifact here called Silver Rain, where you have a 100% chance to increase the attack of the ally except for the caster with the highest attack for 2 turns when you use a non-attack skill. This could be useful for her skill 2, obviously good for her skill 3 as well, because they're all non-attack skills here, and honestly kind of nice, right? Especially if you have a unit that's DPS that doesn't self-buff. And you know, if you're using a skill 2 anyway, it's gonna allow you to like give that unit an attack buff before they go in for their skill 1 attacks. It can increase the amount of damage they do, which is not bad. But outside of giving the attack buff to somebody else, it doesn't provide extra utility for her personally, right? She's more of a support unit in that regard. If you want to support your team, then Alabastron is another really strong artifact here, where you get a flat 35% effectiveness increase, which makes her stat line much easier to achieve, right? You want to stack as much effectiveness as possible here, but after attacking with a single attack, so your S1, you have a 70% chance to inflict a random debuff on the target for 2 turns, and this can be decreased attack, decreased defense, decreased speed, or unhealable. All 4 of them are pretty decent, but honestly, the first 3 are really strong, right? Unhealable is useful in some niches, in some cases, but yeah. Assuming you're inflicting this debuff, your chances of getting something really impactful is really nice. It adds the silence, right? Not only is your opponent silenced, but they deal less damage, or you deal more damage to them, or hey, you push them back already, now decrease their speed, and they can't even take a turn. You're gonna lap them. It's kind of useful. I think this is probably gonna be a very interesting artifact to see people try on her. The next artifact, just an honorable mention here, is going to be Secret Art Storm Sword. The reason I mention this is because Sigret's base speed is relatively low. You do want a chance to cut your opponent if like you don't outspeed. So if your opponent opens with something that does allow them to go before you, and they're using a non-attack skill or something and they're pushing up their team, you might be able to cut with something like this. Just throwing it out there, is probably not going to be used, but don't be surprised if someone has a tech of this on their units, right? But otherwise, yeah, I think her options are relatively decent. If you think that there's another artifact that's going to be good on her besides her own or the 3 that I mentioned here, do let me know in the comments section down below. Okay guys, let's go ahead and talk about some potential builds that you can use on your future Sigret, right? The Flagbearer Sigret. I'm going to be using Winter as an example just because I don't have any gear equipped on her, and she is of the exact same star sign. Now, before we talk about actual builds, let's talk about optimal sets to run. I think you guys already know that speed set is gonna be the way to go here. You want to go as fast as possible, and you definitely want to inflict debuffs on your opponents. So, hit set is definitely going to be great if you want some extra gear score, if you just want some extra effectiveness on your units. Definitely not bad. HP set could be okay. Some people have been farming a lot of HP sets. If you have some laying around, make her a little bit bulkier. She is a support unit, and the evasion does help her a little bit, but keep in mind it's only for 2 turns. You're definitely going to want her to survive if you want long-term usefulness out of her, long-term value, right? Especially if you want a turn cycle to get that S2 back off of cooldown. So that's an option that's available. Immunity is also really decent. I think it's underrated for people trying to build faster units. Inevitably at 118 speed, you're going to be outsped by other units, but immunity makes it so you might not get screwed over by your opponent who's a little bit faster than you. It does allow you to, in some cases, resist your opponent, right? There's 2 checks of 15% there. Here, if your opponent has something that strips a buff off of you, there's a 15% chance they fail because of immunity set, and then if they do strip the immunity, there's a 15% chance that their debuff or won't land, right? Pushing back or whatever. And on top of that, the actual evasion that she has, now is a 70% chance she's evading, right? If you're using an evasion artifact, or 50% chance that you get to evade if you're not using an evasion artifact. So yeah, that's pretty decent. I'd say speed and immunity probably the way to go. You can also just go for some offset pieces as well, whatever your fastest gear is, to try to make her as quick as possible. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and quickly build the fastest possible unit that I can make here for Sigret. So if I just go ahead and take my fastest pieces, try to keep them on speed set if I can, right? Let's do something like this, where I'm keeping speed sets and trying to incorporate anything else I can along the way. Let's do the highest effectiveness build that we can, right? Let's do something like this. So this is a relatively fast build here, honestly. I don't think I have anything else that's faster. Yeah, I'm using the fastest pieces I can to maintain speed set and this offset piece. So I can reach up to 306 speed on this build, for example. It is possible to reach over 300 speed, but keep in mind that's with 21, 26, 22, 24, 21, and a boot in terms of speed stats. It's a lot of speed rolls, right? Realistically, if you're a more casual player stuff, you're not breaking the 300 speed threshold. And even if you are 306 speed, guys, come on. This gear on a Ron is easily 320. This gear on a Rinnock, easily 320. You've already seen Amids with speedy E's that are pushing like 320 plus in my videos too, right? So do keep that in mind that she is going to be contested because 118 base speed is not too difficult to beat. It is not impossible to beat, you know. So people are definitely going to be challenging you there, especially with Zio getting a buff, Ron coming back into the meta. Yeah, it is. It's going to be a tough world for her out there. But this is just an example here. I don't have a second example, right, with like maybe immunity and stuff. If you do have immunity, just go a little bit slower. It is fine to play slower with immunity. Actually, let's see if I can get a little bit of immunity going for us. Maybe I can. We'll do something like this. This is the fastest I think I can do here. Yeah, so 290 speed, a bit more health, bit more effectiveness. It's just chilling out here, right? So another possibility for you if you're on immunity set, it's okay to be a little slower if you're on immunity, like I mentioned, because you're kind of expecting your opponent to kind of outspeed you at this point. Otherwise, if you know you're guaranteeing first turn, you wouldn't care about the immunity buff at the start of the match. So yeah, that is it for the potential builds. Now let's talk about potential teammates that she can run with her. So the first teammate that comes to mind is the one from the video, the one unit that I actually don't have that I really want to get, and it is ML Teu. He's actually one of the few units I don't actually own here. If I go to unacquired, and you can see out of all the units I don't have, ML Teu, Successor Teu, is one of them. He has a really good passive where he starts with Fighting Spirit, and if you get your full Fighting Spirit, you consume all of it, increase combat readiness by 100%, and you grant possession for 2 turns. Now, to gain Fighting Spirit, you get the Fighting Spirit equal to the amount of combat readiness that's reduced on your opponent. And because Sigret has a lot of skills that reduce combat readiness, like her skill 1, her skill 3, all that good stuff, you are going to be, and her skill 2 I think as well, you're going to be really good in terms of your Fighting Spirit economy when using your ML Teu, right? So he is definitely a unit that I think will pair really well as a DPS with her. He also is one of the strongest hitting DPSs just in the game in general. He gets an attack buff, and when he's possessed, increases attack even more, and he does so much damage with skill 1, it's actually insane. So definitely a unit that I think will pair really well with her. Other units that will pair well are definitely any other cleave or aggro units here. In the video, they did show Requiem Rowana, which I think is a pretty decent choice. The fact that she can go and reset your opponent's skills with her skill 3, right, increasing their cooldowns, is really nice for you to buy yourself a turn. And the fact that her skill 1 defense breaks and does extra fixed damage against your opponent is pretty good too, right? Defense breaking, if she goes in S1s and defense breaks and another DPS comes in and S1s afterwards when you use Sigret's S2, it's pretty good value for you, yeah? Saria is definitely another unit that was used in the video. that, you know, can target 2 units at once with her skill 1. Kind of unique interaction, right, that we saw there. But she's also really nice because you have the invincibility for the whole team that you can use. That is actually really nice because it allows you to protect your Sigret and your other DPSs until they can get their next turn, right? So I think that's incredibly valuable. Saria is also going to see a lot more value when Ron gets his buff, so she'll see more play there as well. But yeah, literally any other really fast and strong DPS unit, you can argue that even units like Yufine, because your skill 3 inflicts fear on your opponent, or your skill 2 inflicts target on your opponent, you can use Yufine, who's going to push herself up and gain combat readiness and stuff, right? So her skill 3 here, I believe, yeah, after an ally, except for the caster, uses a skill, if the enemy has a debuff, you increase combat readiness by 20%. This could be a non-attack skill from just like Sigret, for example, here. So Yufine also has a really strong skill 1 that also defense breaks too. Yeah, she's a really strong contender for synergy in terms of fighting with Sigret. You can definitely use things like because Sigret is probably going to be ignoring resistance by soul burning her S2, you can obviously use ML Ludwig as well, who I also don't have here. I'd have to go back to journal, but yeah, ML Ludwig is a pretty good option, right, to be using. And in general, any units that can potentially push up combat readiness with their skill 1s, that's also really nice. If I go for increases combat readiness, I love that they have these filters now, actually. You can sort through and find units that increase their combat readiness on their turn, on their skill 1, and it's kind of nice. Afternoon Soak Flan actually seems pretty decent with her as well, if you want to use her there. It's going to be one of those things where she's supposed to counter evasion units, but you're going to see people running evasion units with her, and that is going to be incredibly annoying to deal with, right? So do keep that in mind as well. You can definitely run through here with like Argent Wave Hua Young, because, you know, the Sigret has non-attack skills, so Argent Wave Hua Young is going to be able to trigger her S2. She's going to push herself up, and not only that, but when you S3, you push the unit in the back line up. You're going to be able to start snowballing your advantage into your opponent, right? Coupling her with stuff like Ahmed is also not terrible. You can have a really strong fast opener like Ahmed, for example, buffing your DPSs, taking turns, right? Get that attack buff, crit damage buff on somebody, and then Sigret comes in with an S2. You're dual attacking with them as well. It's going to be nasty. So I can definitely see a lot of potential with her. But yeah, let me know what you guys think is going to be a really cool hidden gem to use with the new Sigret. Obviously, again, any DPSs, Freerin gonna be decent as well. Her S1 hits like a truck too. Yeah, there's so many options. I can even see people potentially running her with just like anchors and stuff, right? Imagine using your skill 2 and dual attacking with everybody. You might have an anchor on your team that is, you know, trying to keep the team alive. If you have a bunch of squishy DPSs and let's say a Bystander Hua Young. Bystander Hua Young, when she's skill 1, she increases her combat readiness by 20%. She's going to be dual attacking to the opponent, dealing a lot of damage, and you push her up. She's going to take the turn. She's going to cut your opponents. You're going to be faster than ML Raz, for example. And then, you know, there you go, right? Easy way to counter a MLK run on the opponent's side, for example here. Not too shabby. But yeah, so anyway, let me know what you guys think your favorite combo is going to potentially be on paper, and I'll try to test her out when November 27th rolls around and I can test her in Arena. But anyway, with that being said, I think Sigret is going to be quite an interesting character. I don't know if I necessarily have the gear to make her absolutely amazing. I'll try my best with the fastest gear I have, and we'll try to make her work in Arena. I definitely can't wait, because if there is a headhunt event this year, I'm hoping there is, Smilegate, please don't disappoint, then I'm gonna try to get Successor Teiyu, and if I can get my hands on Successor Teiyu, you guys know I am definitely gonna be trying him out with Sigret, right? Because that combo, look at it guys, it just looks so cool. Alright, with that being said though guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.